As you can see by the title of this video, we're entering another Just Ronnie series. Um, I actually appreciate a lot of the feedback that I got from the mental health journey. It was at least a customer or two from my job that actually ended up subscribing, just to check my stuff out, and they actually really enjoyed the videos. They liked. Some people seem to, really. The reception was pretty good in that regard, and it had really more of a video. This series is more about looking within, right? Because one of the things that I know I didn't really get to talk too much about was some sense of awareness when it comes to accountability, when it comes to what's the word? I'm trying to find the word. Forgive me that I'm not thinking real quick. Making amends. There we go. There we go. Making amends, awareness, and yeah, and other things were what did I have to do within myself that I had to change my mindset and attitude when it came to everything. Because granted, yes, the purpose for therapy for me is about regaining control of myself from the kung fu grip of depression. For me, that goal was met, as I spoke in the previous series. But now we're talking about looking within. So, like for example, when it came to my temper, I know I briefly spoke about it in the previous series. I never always had the best temper in the world in the past, right? I would tend to sometimes just, go off the handle or sometimes jump into conclusions instead of stepping back and looking at things. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a work in progress. There's still aspects of that I'm still working on. Every day you try to grow, you try to correct course. And of course, when you're older, it's a little harder, but not impossible. So that was another thing. But the good thing with that was that I look back now to where I was. I was like, okay, there was definitely changes because pre-therapy, oh my God, my temper was more prone to be quick, more prone to be explosive. And if not explosive, it was implosive. All right. So a good example of this, right? Anyone who's seen the Adam Sandler Jack Nicholson film Anger Management, right? Jack Nicholson's character, he puts it this way. Explosive anger is when you get when you're yelling at the cashier because he didn't get your change right. Impulsive anger is when you're quiet, is the cashier who's quiet day after day and suddenly shoots everyone in the store. Interestingly enough, yeah, I found myself heading closely down that road. Um, but thankfully, over time, I've learned to just, and again, it's not easy. It's really more of learning to step back instead of snapping right away. I'll give you an example, right? Like, I want to back to like 2019, 2018. Like, for example, if, let's say, my kid, she did something she's really not supposed to do, normally I would raise my voice, be like, "Hey, why are you doing that? You're not supposed to," you know. And of course, poor kid gonna get scared as hell, because like But then over time, and this is where therapy actually helped me out. I've learned to become a lot more passive with my daughter. So instead of being like, "Hey, why are you doing that? Come on!" Like now it's more like, "Hey, whoa, kiddo, wait, hello, I'm right here. Why are you doing that? Or what made you think that was okay?" Ask questions, right? Instead of being like, "Hey, don't do that." This is like, "Oh, wait, hold on." And as a result, communication between me and my kid has gotten a lot better in that regard. And of course, because she's young, impressionable, but also vulnerable, you know, that's an adjustment my kids probably have has had to make over time too. Because you think about it, right? She's probably used to daddy being a little more upset, a little more alerted when she does something wrong. But now daddy's being a little more calm. But remember, little kid, brain still developing and everything. The way they process things is going to be different than us adults. Us adults would see things, all right, boom, cool, okay. You know, I have to sometimes step back, look at my kid, and put myself in her shoes and really think about it. Like if I was in her shoes, would I be like, okay, cool? Or I'd be like, what would my mindset be? I'm like, okay, daddy's not yelling at me. He's actually talking to me nicely, but what if he starts yelling at me again? So, those may or may not be her thoughts, but, you just have to kind of think there for a second in her shoes and in her mind frame so you can get a better understanding. So now when it's like anything with my kid that's going on, like let's say if I see something's out of line, I'll be like, well, wait, hold on. Like, hold on there. Lori, wait, what's up? What's going on? Or why are you? Or like, not how dare you or don't you ever. It's more like, hey, why are you doing that? How come you're doing this? Like, what's up? You know? And if you ask questions, eventually you get answers. Eventually. And the clearer the questions are, the more clear the answers are gonna be. That's just how it is. And the thing with being a parent is that there's no manual for your kid to tell you, oh yeah, this is everything you need to know about your kid. Nah, nah, there's no guarantee on that because the truth is sometimes there's gonna be things where it's gonna be easier for you to than other things. Like for example, my kid likes to read. Right? She loves reading. She loves playing with video games. Kind of like her old man. She also likes to sometimes draw. You know, and sometimes she'll try to do all three at the same time. So but again, it's also kind of it is a challenging territory also for me as a person because now it's like, all right, you got a kid, and then there's you, not necessarily the same thing, right? Right. So that's one aspect of myself looking back now inside of like how I've been now versus how I was before that I know that I definitely changed. One thing that I also used to have a very serious issue with, right? If someone was in the wrong about something, even a love interest, I might as well just go out swinging with this one. In the past, I want to say like 2010, 2012, I wasted no time in calling them out on their crap in an aggressive manner, not in a calm, collected manner, not in a, you know what, let me just leave them be for a bit and maybe when they're ready, I can talk to them. Or, and I didn't even have that mindset of, you know what, Ronnie, chill the F out right now. Chill out. Trying to talk to him right now the way you're feeling is not going to do any favors. I had nowhere, I was oblivious about even those concepts. Fast forwarding now, 12 years later, it's it's not as it was before. So like for example, I had a friend of mine, right? Wasn't she wasn't really in the best of spirits or whatever. So I'll be like, you know what? You do what you gotta do. You gotta take care of. Don't worry about it. Listen, when you're ready to talk, that's fine. Whatever. Like if you're ready to talk, you'll talk. If you're not, that's okay. That's all right. What am I gonna be mad about, right? I can't control them. They don't control me. We're independent people. You know, that's how it is. Now it's more like, for example, if I have a problem with someone, eventually I'll be like, hey, listen, you got a second? There's something I need to talk to you about. and let that be that. And sometimes they may say something I may not even want to hear. Or, not that I don't want to hear it, but I'm not ready to hear it or receive it to really process it in my head and understand it. Conflict resolution at work, I wouldn't say I'm avoidant, but I'm not aggressive confrontational either. Because I do understand that the extremes of both can be extremely bad. Because one on one extreme, you're not standing up for yourself, so people are gonna keep pushing you down, saying and doing whatever as they please, until one day you snap and go to the other extreme where you just straight up cussing them out and all that stuff. Like I will tell you right now, there was a job I lost. It was 10 years ago. I lost a job all because of my temper. Like, okay, I get it. Some managers try to push buttons to try and see how you react. Like the genuine sense of what gaslighting truly looks like. Like you're busting your butt, you're cleaning, you're doing what you're being asked, and then they're straight up telling you you're not doing it at all. When clear as day, even members of the facility and everything are saying, "Yo, this dude's busting his butt in half. How are you gonna tell him he's not doing it?" I could have just simply like keep myself level headed, or even ask questions so that way there's a clear communication, so that way there'd be no friction, to the point that you could cut a knife through it. But instead, what I did was I just straight up snapped, yelled at that authority figure, and next thing you know, I had like two managers trying to chill me the hell out. That is the difference between who I was then versus I am now. Now, I'm like, okay, what do you mean by that? I'm like, all right, cool. And then if I see something that where it's like, you know what, how about this type of thing? Because in the workplace, sometimes, being aggressive isn't going to help, but also being a pushover doesn't help either. But if you find a middle ground where you can somehow communicate, even if it's a person you may feel iffy about, but at the end of the day, you can like them or you cannot like them. But if you conduct yourself as a professional, they won't be able to use anything against you. Because at that point, it's like, person's being a consummate professional with me, even though I may not like them, or they themselves may not like me. And the truth about life is, not everyone's gonna like you. Someone's gonna paint you on as the bad guy. Someone's gonna say that you're X, Y, Z. Guess what? You can't control it. There's nothing you can do about it. So what you gonna do? Cry? There's an analogy um, that someone brought up in a conversation recently. Like, okay, so X, Y, and Z person was an a-hole to you. Now what? You grown, you're old enough. Like, obviously, you can't have that approach with a kid. Children are different. Children are still trying to develop these things, and they're so young. Like, nothing's fully fleshed out. But it is important that you do teach kids how to properly problem solve, so that way when they get older, life doesn't kick them down as hard. Not saying they can't be emotional, because obviously they have to express how they feel, and if they feel a certain way, yeah, there's a time and place to talk about it. When you have to take care of certain things, there's no time to sit there and talk about feelings. But when certain things are taken care of, then it's like, okay, now we sit down. Let's talk about it. Let's see what's going on. All right. Why were you feeling X, Y, and Z like 30 minutes ago? You know? So that way, it's like you're dividing the events from the dealing of feelings. Because if you try to do the two at the same time, I guarantee you chaos will ensue. Um, like that's like, for example, when it comes to talking with my kid about school. This is actually a pretty relevant example. Instead of sitting there talking about the whole day of school while walking to the house, I'll be like, hey, let's talk about it when we get home, okay? Right now, let's just enjoy the walk, right? How are you feeling right now? You know, she's like, I'm good, okay. I'm like, you having a good time? Yeah. Um, you know, keep it small, keep the talk small. And then once getting in the house, be like, okay, so tell me about your day at school. What did you learn? What do you remember? Do you remember? And sometimes just ask them random questions that may not necessarily be related to each other, just to make their brain jog. Reason being, you want to see them actually eventually open up. So that way you have a better understanding of where their mind's at. So that way, once you understand where their mind's at, you know how to help them. and you have a better understanding of where they are. And it doesn't, they don't even have to be interconnected. It doesn't have to be like, okay, so what you eat for breakfast? What you do reading? No, no, be like, yo, who's your friend of the day? What was your favorite part of lunch? What song did y'all sing over music class? Or what game did y'all play in recess? And don't necessarily do it in that order. Mix it up. Scramble it a little. Yeah, it might get them. You know what? That's okay. You know why? Because it's helping the kid do something, and that's get that brain moving. Get that brain moving. Have them sit down, even if they don't answer you right away, and that's fine. Like sometimes that's another thing that I used to do that I stopped doing. Before I used to kind of like do this thing where I'd be like, all right, come on, just spit it out already, right? See, among adults, you could probably do that, and even then, there's no guarantee that that will give you a good result, right? Because granted, me, like I like to see result. I like to see things progress. I don't like to sit there and wander on things too long. That's just me. But sometimes the best thing to do, give the kid or give the person time to just collect themselves. And if they feel like they're jumbling through their words to try and express what they want to tell you, be like, hey, take a deep breath, kid. Take a deep breath. If you can't get your thoughts together right away, it's all right. Take a deep breath. Go. All right. Do it a few times, kid. Be like, how you feel now? It's like, feel better. I'm like, okay, now tell me what happened on XYZ. And sure enough, you'll see that they'll feel more relaxed to actually talk about whatever it is that may be bothering them or something that they're very excited about. But let me tell you something. If the kid sees a meme and she loves it, yo, she will get all up in my face. Saturday morning cartoon style, be like, hey, dad. I'll be like, whoa. That little stuff. Like, for example, I just found out that she has discovered South Park memes. And I'm like, oh, God. She's just 1 year away from being the South Park territory, i.e., being a fourth grader. I'm not trying to think about that yet. I always tell parents that whenever I'm like, bro, once they hit fourth grade, bro, start thinking about South Park, bro. You start thinking about how really mean kids can be. You know, this is a connection point with my kid, right? Like one of the things that I think this goes back even to my childhood, right? So, for example, I used to get bullied a lot towards the end of fifth grade and at least half of junior high, right? The problem, my dad was well intended. I'm not like I ain't got a front. Like he was like, hey, listen, if something's up at school, tell the teacher. All right, he told me to tell the teacher, but the one thing that I didn't really get taught was to stand up for myself prior to that, right? And speak up for myself because normally I'd just keep my mouth shut or I tell the teacher, but then I didn't really stand up for myself because it was like, you know. So, for example, there was a time where my kid was being bullied in class by this kid last year. So I told Lori, I was like, all right, kid, listen, this is what I want you to do. All right. Stand up for yourself. All right. So the kid says something, be like, no, you will not talk to me like that. Go ahead. Plain and simple. Right. The kid says something mean to you, you tell him to stop. No means no. Point blank, right? And if he keeps going, then tell the teacher. But always make sure you stand up for yourself first, right? And then if by yourself it ain't cutting it, then get the teacher involved. So that way, teacher gets that problem solved. And there have already been a few occasions where my kid took what I told her, she got the job done, and she hasn't been having issues since, which is a beautiful thing. Um, now she's making friends, at school, which is really cool, and like calls them her sister squad. It's cute. I love it. I really do. And then one other thing when it comes to just, looking within and really observing things for myself was when it came to problems. Because one of the things I used to do was, for example, back home in Brooklyn, right? Sometimes if I was down in the dumps, one of the things I would do was just hop on the Staten Island ferry. And they'd be like, "What's over there?" I was like, "I don't care about what's in Staten Island. I just care about hopping on the ferry because, being by the sea, being on a boat, just hearing the sound of the waves of the ocean and the water, birds, the sky, that imagery was what helped me like just shut everything off around me so I can really get my. It was actually pretty good. It actually helped in that regard. I just now looking back, thinking, I'm like, you know what? I could have done that a lot more often with anything that was bothering me. But the problem was that often I'd be so stuck in myself with my head up my ass. And because my head was so far up my ass, I couldn't hear anything else was going on. I was basically stuck in a self echo. For example, sometimes you have to hear opinions outside of your own because you might learn something. Like if you sit down, listen to someone else for another perspective on something that you're struggling with, you might learn something new. Or you might be able to see something that you never thought of before. Just how it is, right? Sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. Sometimes the perspective may be completely irrelevant to what's going on, or sometimes that person's perspective may not be compatible with what's going on either. But either way, it always helps to look from a different angle just to try and further look at things and try to problem solve further instead of avoiding the issue or sweeping it under the rug and praying that it won't come back to bite you. Temper, sitting down and communicating about things. Yeah, those are the two main things that usually I would deal with a lot. I would sometimes sit with my feelings a little too long. Like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with sitting down with your feelings in an appropriate and healthy manner. But if you sit on them too long, that can really mess with you. So instead of it helping you ease anxiety, it can sometimes accelerate it or elevate it, I should properly say. So with that, I learned to like some things, yeah, okay, you have to sit in on it and really think about it and dissect. But sometimes if you sit on it too long, i.e., overthinking, oh my God, that can send you to a feedback loop of chaos. It can. It really can. And if you really don't tame it, it will. Instead of it being it can, it will. Obviously, you don't want that. So you can take that as food for thought. Who knows? You can probably take that to the bank. But again, I'm just giving you guys my experience, right? So going back to the whole temper and confrontation thing, I'm teaching my kid what I didn't properly do when I was her age or even when I was a teenager. Now, high school for me, unlike the majority of people, I didn't have a bad time necessarily. Like, for the most part, I never got bullied, never got picked on. But then again, I wasn't in high school in the hood, so there's that too. I completely dodged that environment altogether just so that I wouldn't have to even think or even worry about getting bullied around because I didn't want to be bothered. I just wanted to be in a school and just learn and just be me. Just, yeah, that's the tricky thing with that. Like being able to love myself, that was very difficult before. Now I'm at a better place with it. Um, Now, learning to communicate certain things with people, um, that's still a balance that I'm still learning, right? Because there are some people that, due to issues outside of what you may be aware of, there are some things you're best not to talk about. Not because you don't want to address the issue, but because there's certain things they're just not ready for. So it goes back to that. All right, let me put it this way. All right, there aren't many things that if you bring it up, I'm gonna lose my shit over. There's not really much that outrages me anymore. Really don't, because I'm like, because when I look at it, it's like the world as we've known it has changed many times since time immemorial. Right? the known world has been destroyed and reset many ways, right? And not necessarily in a literal sense, but in like, hey, this empire ended, this empire rise. They had a year of dominance, they influenced the world a certain way, and then another, and then another, then another. The world as you know it always gets destroyed, and then a new phase of it begins. It's just a thread of reality. It's just how it works, right? So for me, when it came to accountability, right, I ended up talking to my therapist about things. And of course there were times where she was like, "Yeah, that could have been handled a little better. You could have done it this way or that way, right?" But sometimes, no matter how well intended you are, and no matter how you try to switch it up, some people just get mad at you. They just do. Some people, no matter how much you try to change your wording, change your approach, they're gonna get pissy no matter what. Just like, you know what? Maybe it's best I don't say anything. Or maybe just not talk about it. Because apparently I'm not the right person for them to talk to about XYZ matter. Or their opinion is so set on, well, da da da. It's like, you know what? There's no point in me talking to this person about it or challenging them on it because their mind has already been made up. So in that case, it's like, you know what? Just leave it be. Just leave it be. You know what? People will be people. People are who they are. Yeah. And sometimes they are exactly who they say they are. And some people, they'll tell you who they are in your face one thing, but in reality behind closed doors is something else. For me, learning the term trigger, right? I feel like that term gets used a little too loosely. And it doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you are, I feel like the word is grossly misused, right? Because the word trigger is supposed to be in relation to PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. People that have PTSD because of actual traumatic experiences towards where other people do certain things and it gives you an instant reminder of something terrible that happened to you. Then it's like, all right, yeah, that's being. But for some odd, inexplicable reason, people have the obsession of just, oh, you got triggered, bro. I'm like, no, I may have gotten in my feelings a bit, or I might have been a little tight because I'm like, you know what, that didn't really work out in my favor, or that really didn't suit me, or that didn't suit the people that I was hoping it would help. I wouldn't say trigger. Because if that was the case, it'd be reminding me of something really bad that happened that's relevant to what is getting me worked up. And sometimes, and that's the difference. I think it's because of the fact that usually I'm very harsh on myself. Like usually, if I goof up on something, I will beat myself up to kingdom come. And that's something that my therapist taught me that I need to stop doing so much. Because honestly, beating yourself up is not really doing anything. Because then it could lead to self sabotage, right? You think about it. You did something wrong. Okay, you did something wrong. It was bad. And it had bad consequences along with it. Now what? The problem before was that I would never ask the now what part. So that I could be like, okay, so what do I do to move forward? Right? To move forward and get past the point of where I was so I can be where I want to be. Now it's like, okay, this happened, this went wrong. What do I do? That's where I'm at now versus where I was 10, 12 years ago. Before I either restrained too much or I let out too much instead of knowing when I need to actually speak and knowing when to keep my mouth shut. So, one example, right, with work, right? There was a point in my job where office politics bled its way out, and I couldn't even avoid it. Because me personally, I don't like office politics. Leave me out of that BS. I'm not all about the ripping and running. I ain't trying to kiss nobody's butt. I'm not trying to sow discord among coworkers. And I sure as heck am not going to be playing favorites. Not how I roll. That's just how it is. And the only thing I ever tell people, be like, hey, I got your back so long as you're doing what you need to do. But there was a point where I could not avoid the office politics, mainly because it was someone that my other coworkers perceived as my buddy, when in reality, in my opinion, he was the guy, yeah, I did a little hee hee ha ha, but beyond that, we weren't hanging out outside of work. We didn't really have a friendship or a relationship of any kind outside of work. And I've never been one to like chat in his ear to soften him up for favors or to like try and throw other people on the ground to clear the way for me. Not my style, not who I am, right? But because I was cordial and respectful, they perceived, oh, that's his manager or whatever, whoever he was. But the thing was, I remember I had to like just address to one of my coworkers. I was like, listen, to be honest with you, I'm the guy playing priest here. I hear what you guys have to say. I hear what you guys are going through. And I hear what he's saying. And at no means am I trying to create opposition because me, I'm just asking questions. And the only thing I would tell, that specific employee at the time would be like, hey, well, why don't you look at it this way? Or why don't you think about this? Because, let's be real. Like, we're all working together. We're all in this together anyway. Like, you know, why don't you guys just squash the beef? You know what I mean? But the thing is, if you're trying to problem solve and the person in question is on a whole blitzkrieg of frustration, it's like, and then it's like, yeah, the office politics are gonna get ugly until one day this guy shoots himself in the foot, which eventually did happen. Although, oddly enough, for reasons irrelevant to the problems he was already doing to himself. And of course, there's always three sides to the story. Not two, three. There's their side, there's that person's side, and the truth. And the truth is always somewhere in that middle. There will always be something that one person's saying that's fair, and then something's a little skewed because it's their bias. And then there's the other person, you know, got their bias, but then also saying some things is like, okay, yeah, that part is true. Some of the truth is in the middle, where they're both wrong about something and they both might be right about something about the other person or party. Let me tell you, there were some people I was like, listen, like one time, this one supervisor literally sent someone home because instead of saying because sent them home because they weren't feeling well, no, he had told me straight up that this person was, uh, uh, a certain type of drug user or whatever. I'm like, bro, this person's on a medication because they're experiencing stomach pain and a toothache. Like, that's pretty rough. And time of the month too, woman issues, and I don't have to really, expand on that. Like, I found it kind of messed up. I was like, bro, like, just straight up labeled the person as a certain type of drug user or whatever. And I didn't like that. And then that same person had the perception that I was kissing this supervisor's butt. I was like, listen, I'm just letting you know. Like, as long as you're not goofing up, I got your back because at the end of the day, I know what you're going through. And I, not only that, I stuck my neck out for you when he was trying to just steamroll you. Like, he said X, Y, and Z. I told him, I was like, did you even ask to see what was going on that she was feeling that way or whatever? Because I'll tell you this, guys. I used to be in a managerial position. So I understand about maintaining and trying to build morale among your peers. Even if they are subordinate to you, doesn't mean you go ahead and be a tyrant. If anything, anyone who's underneath you in the pecking order, they're looking to you for leadership and they're looking to you for direction. So if your team is having a morale issue, obviously you're going to want to be like, all right, let's do this, whatever. Let's chill out a bit, and then let's just get back at it. Like, for example, in the store that I used to work at a previous job, sometimes, oh my God, business was just stressful and a pain in the butt. You know what I would do? Halfway through a shift, I step out for a second, go to a store next door, get some pizza, and bring it to the crew. Be like, hey, this is for y'all. This ain't for me. This is for y'all. Like, cause look, you guys are working. You guys are doing what you got to do. Look, I'm just trying to treat y'all so that way I can get that morale back up and going. Because you know what? If you treat people you work with right, yo, things will get better. I didn't have that mindset back then. Back then, it was like, I'll even go further back to when I was working at a store back in 2006. Like before, like, because I used to get picked on a lot and ridiculed, I was that guy that was ready to snitch at any opportunity just to get back at them. Sounds cool and all, but then at the same time, it's like, was it really worth it? Because then all of a sudden, because of doing that, all of a sudden I put a target on my back. So then when something happened to me where I wasn't able to come into work or whatever, they found any underlying opportunity to just drop me like a bad habit. The understanding of consequences for actions was definitely something that over the course of the last 10, 15 years, I had to learn. I had to learn. And some things were easier to adapt and change at than others. And just how it is. Those are my gathering thoughts right now. I may do another video another time and actually expound on this expand on this even further.